Welcome into I Said What I Said. I'm Brad McKay. That's Tyson Gentry. This is our NFL Week 10 reaction show. Tyson, it's starting to get pretty interesting in the NFL, I got to say. We got all of a sudden a bunch of teams competing for the number one overall pick. We got teams starting to play a lot better on the field, and I think we're going to have some interesting stretches to close this out as we get into divisional matchups.
Yeah, we got teams competing for the number one pick, but we got teams competing for the number one seed. And that's going to be, most of our focus going forward here on the show will be on like the competitive teams. We got a little something for some of these guys that are separated from the pack the other way, but it's definitely, we talked a couple weeks ago, like the cream hasn't really risen to the top yet. And I think that the separation is now very visible.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. But we got a lot to get to. Let's get right into it, Tyson.
Just say it.
Folks, Jim Harbaugh is the magician. And I heard a lot of people hating on him. And I don't think necessarily it was that coming into the NFL when he was leaving Michigan as the national champ. But for a long time, and if you're just an NFL guy, that's okay. And if you kind of had the Harbaugh and he was out of sight, out of mind for a while when he was at Michigan, then you maybe didn't pay attention as much to the national conversation that was surrounding him early on in Michigan. But there's a lot of criticism. Why isn't he winning? Why can't he beat Ohio State? And all of a sudden, just took a little bit of time for this master program builder to build it up at Michigan. And then next thing you know, they're churning. They went from being an afterthought in the Ohio State rivalry into dominating that, winning a national championship. He leaves his legacy on his alma mater. He comes to the NFL. Perfect situation, right? Let's go get a quarterback in Justin Herbert, and we kind of just do whatever else we need to do after that. But it was a mess in Los Angeles with the Chargers. Inflated contracts, not a lot of talent everywhere, and Harbaugh comes in, Tyson, and immediately culture shift. This team is physical. They run the football. They tackle. They hit. And all of a sudden, they're sitting here at 6-3. They're expected to beat the Titans. Got a little dicey early. Doesn't matter. They don't panic. Harbaugh doesn't panic. They stick to the plan, and the magician eventually comes through, pulling out the ace of spades right behind your ear, and you're like, what the hell just happened? And that's what's going on in Los Angeles. We're talking about the Chiefs, and they could very well win, and we'll get into them, very well win 3 Super Bowls in a row, and they're in the middle of a dynasty. Tyson, they might not be long before Harbaugh takes his Michigan team, his Chargers team, and challenges the Ohio States, challenges the Chiefs of the world in that division. And next thing we know, we're looking up and we're like, holy smokes, are the Chargers the next team in the AFC?
Yeah, we'll find out soon. And this is a team that I think it's important to note is lacking pass catchers right now. And Harbaugh didn't throw the ball a ton at Michigan. He didn't throw the ball a ton in San Francisco to start, but it sure helps, doesn't it, just to have some of those guys. And by the way, Justin Herbert is so goddamn good at football, and it is refreshing to see. Like, there was a massive overcorrection to like Herbert actually sucks. If you're really, and they're pushing their glasses up and stuff, this dude could play like for real. And I didn't know if he could play like this. So yeah, I was all over the Chargers preseason. I love to see a little Jim Harbaugh shout out. Might just say it this week, Brad. And Harbaugh's a perfect example of this because NFL teams, organizations, it's okay to learn from other people's mistakes. You don't have to keep repeating your own. Look at what's going on in New York right now. Like, how many times we're going to have the same discussion about these New York Giants and lacking in offensive line play, lacking explosive defensive players, lacking quarterback play, and they're just going to keep banging their heads against the wall. The Chicago Bears suck right now. And why is that? Because they did the same thing with John Fox, and then they did the same thing with Matt Nagy, and now they're doing it to Matt Eberflus. And just, it's a lame duck head coach this is the first time I would say that it's an actual generational guy in Caleb Williams. But then you bring in Shane Waldron, a guy who showed you that he can't coach at the NFL level. And we'll get into him and losing his job a little bit later in the show. The Jets just keep throwing players at the problem, and they suck, and they just keep doing it over and over again. Well, we need Devontae Adams. Why? And we got to fire Robert Saleh. Well, the defense has gotten significantly worse. Now you're getting punched in the face. Kyler Murray looks like an all-pro MVP world beater on Sunday against them. That game wasn't close for a second. Jonathan Gannon's doing whatever he wants to that offense, this all-world offense with all of these all-pro players on it. What the hell is going on? And then the last one is Dallas. Jerry, it's been 20 years, brother. You're doing the same thing. Remember how long it took them to move on from a Jason Garrett? like 5 years after everyone said, well, the milk's expired. You got to get this out of the fridge. Just shove it in the back. We'll worry about it when we get there. McCarthy's going through the same thing right now. This is a roster with some names on it. You see the CeeDee Lambs and you see the Micah Parsons, and you get all excited. Look at the the blue chippers that we have. The depth sucks. The line play sucks. The guys don't look like they want to be out there. Overshown was the best player on Sunday, I thought, and I don't even really know if it was that close. Micah had some good moments, but the team has no fight, essentially. And look, it's tough when you're allowing 40 points at home, but you win and you got a dinosaur to coach the defense. You kick Dan Quinn out the building, go get Mike Zimmer, who hasn't changed his scheme since before Gus Bradley even remembered he could run a cover three. Like, we're always making fun of Gus, and Zim's doing the same thing. I think that some of these NFL teams can look around because Andy Reid doesn't repeat mistakes, and Mike Tomlin doesn't repeat mistakes, and Jim and John Harbaugh don't repeat mistakes. And those are the best franchises, the best winners in the NFL. But these ones are who we talk about every week. I just named probably the 4 of the 7 most talked about teams in the NFL. And they just keep doing what they're doing.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot to unpack there. And we'll get into a little bit more on the Bears front here pretty soon. But the overarching thing that you were saying here, the line play, right? The trenches are atrocious on these teams. Talk about not repeating mistakes. How many times can we look at a poor franchise and say, where are they deficient? Offensive line play and defensive line play. Why is that not the first thing that a general manager in a front office addresses? Okay, we're bad on the offensive line. Let's fricking go draft multiple guys on the defensive and offensive line. Everybody was making fun of Harbaugh, right? Oh my God, you can't pass on Malik Neighbors.
Joe Alt over Neighbors.
Can't take Joe Alt. Well, Justin Herbert, now it's time to throw. And Quentin Johnson all of a sudden looks like he's actually an NFL guy. You know why? Because he has the ability to get open, because Justin Herbert can sit back there and find him. So, I mean, it's funny. You mentioned the Giants. How many times we talk about their offensive line? We'll talk about the Bears. Now, all of a sudden, Dallas, like you mentioned, they just are like, we'll just pay these other guys. We'll pay our superstars. The offensive line is taking a hit. The defensive line is taking a hit. And I completely agree. It's mistakes that people don't even really talk about that much.
And those are 2 teams, before people get on us, because the Giants and Cowboys have both invested heavily in the offensive and defensive lines through the draft. But, Brad, what is the archetype of player that they keep drafting? What is your Evan Neal? What is your, pick a name out of a hat for Dallas? So they've had some hits here and there, but it is continually either somebody with small arms or just an undersized player that's an athletic freak that you want to teach how to play that position. That's not how this works, man. You need a Penei Sewell to walk in there if you want a day one starter. You need a Joe Alt. You can't keep just grabbing Tyler Guyton and hoping.
Yeah, that's so. Well, let's get into a little bit here, Tyson, as we move into our next segment.
Armchair Quarterback.
And so we'll do a little rookie QB check-in here, and things are kind of coming off the rails a little bit for Caleb Williams, and I'm laughing at the Bears. So now there's discussions about sitting him down, and I didn't necessarily rip the Colts for sitting down Anthony Richardson, so I don't want to seem like a little bit of
that feels like a different thing.
It feels like a different thing, right? Caleb Williams is polished. Anthony Richardson's not. We knew he was a project. We thought Caleb Williams was going to come in here and be the guy, and right now it hasn't been. Like, he looks probably, I don't know, Tyson, the 3rd best right now. I mean, Drake May, we'll get into him a little bit, and I want to hear your thoughts. But this, to me, this is the issue. Every talked about is just the best weapons that a rookie quarterback's ever had for Caleb Williams. Tyson, he is on pace to be sacked more than David Carr in the Houston Texans back in the day. The most that a rookie QB's ever been sacked. It doesn't matter who your weapons are, if you cannot protect the quarterback. Now, there have been a bunch of injuries. You have 4 backup offensive linemen cross the line on Sunday, and that was a huge issue. Like, Caleb Williams is missing throws, and Moose Johnson's pointing it out. I thought he was a little bit over the top.
Being a hater, dude.
I'm like, dude, that got tipped. There was 3 balls that were tipped to the line. He's like, he missed that. I'm like, you don't see the ball literally wobbling sideways? It's like, come on, Moose. I like you, but geez, man, let's take it down a notch. And people are piling on, and I think there are criticisms that can be levied here. But this is the people jumping ship. Please do, because I'll buy up all the stock of the world on Caleb Williams. But Tyson, this goes back to your point, and I'll let you jump in here. It's just such a poor construction of this offensive line. Shane Waldron gets canned. I don't know how that's going to help, because Matt Eberflus is a dead man walking. He's going to be fired at the end of the season. It's just a mess in Chicago, and that's just what it always is.
Yeah, this is a weird position for me to be in, because for the last 3 years, I think I've been one of the bigger Caleb Williams haters. on the internet, just over and over. I feel like I'm piling on this kid. Everyone needs to calm the heck down. I mean, they're running man beaters against zone. They're running zone beaters against man. The concepts suck. The personnel usage is horrible. You're running long, slow developing routes with Keenan Allen, who's an awesome route runner. He's 115 years old. It's going to take a little while for him to get to the 9-yard, spot for Caleb to hit his back foot and throw. DJ Moore looks completely, and that's my guy. I love DJ Moore. He's probably one of my, 3 or 4 favorite players in the entire NFL. He looks uninterested. He's rounding his routes. We saw the clip of him just kind of walking off, and it's like, oh, he was hurt or he didn't want to have Caleb throw it to him because he was out of bounds. None of that is true. He just quit on the play, and that's happening over and over again in Chicago. There's a lot of problems in Chicago, and Caleb Williams is a problem. He hasn't been good, but that doesn't mean that he's the problem or that piling on this 20-year-old kid is going to make him better or make their problems go away. Shane Waldron is a bad hire when they made it. If anybody's curious, go check out what Jackson Smith and Jigba had to say when he found out. All right, and look at what Jackson Smith and Jigba did rookie year to now, and that's just with Ryan Grubb coming in and changing things. But when the bar that you're being compared to is Caleb Williams with all the hype and you're shooting the text to the punter on Hard Knocks, like you're not even don't worry about it. We don't need you this year. All that stuff, they did bring a little bit of it onto themselves. But then you kind of take him and the number one pick and the best situation number one picks ever walked into, and you look at not even what Jaden Daniels is doing, because I think he's walking away with the Rookie of the Year right now.
Yeah.
Look at Bo Nix. A guy that I was so low on coming in. Bo Nix can't play. This guy stinks. It's not going to work in the NFL. And Sean Payton deserves a huge, huge credit for this. But Bo Nix has been a better player. Bo Nix is in a better system. Bo Nix is being asked to do things that he can do and not asked to do things that should be expected really of a 10-year vet. And I think that's the issue right now with Caleb is it's like you're asking him to do things that your Derek Carrs, your Kirk Cousins should be able to pull off when he's only seen this defense twice.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with Caleb Williams, and everybody's trying to make a proclamation, folks. It's been 10 games. Like Tyson said, let's pump the brakes. But I do want to get into Bo Nix because I think everybody thought that how Caleb Williams is looking right now is how Bo Nix is going to be.
Bo, definitely.
And you said it. I know it pains you to say that, but Sean Payton has done a masterful job with Bo Nix. It cannot be understated how good of a job that Sean Payton's doing here. And I remember when Bo Nix was yelling at him on the sideline, and everybody's like, "Oh, look, Bo Nix is already sick of Sean Payton." Everybody's like, "Yeah, let's stick it to Sean Payton because the Russell Wilson thing didn't work last year." It's like
people hate competitiveness, dude. That was just pure, unfiltered. I'm competitive.
Did you hear what Drew Brees said too? Folks, if you haven't heard this, Drew Brees is like, Sean Payton's going to go after it. You got to stand up for yourself. Sean Payton wants you to yell back at him. He wants you to go at him because he's a competitor and he wants his quarterbacks to be a competitor. He would not have put his reputation on the line, been like, no, I love Bo Nix. He talked with him. Remember Bo Nix had his backpack and the only thing in there was a playbook.
Mm-hmm.
He's in there. He's like, playbook. He's like, no way. He's like, oh my God, I found my match. I got my next Drew Brees. And so he's going to get in his ass. And Bo Nix, competitive guy. We saw him. You and I saw him in college. He was going at teammates. He was going at coaches. And I think it's a perfect match. Bo Nix has always been a guy who's been curious. The Auburn thing didn't quite work out. It fizzled out. Then he goes to Oregon and looks much better. Tyson, he is in a perfect situation. He's much more mature coming in at this stage in his career. Sean Payton is just like, dude, listen, let's do this. Let's operate. And then we'll kind of get to your other stuff where we want to kind of go off script and things like that. That'll come. But right now, and I think he's wheeled them in, this offense right now, Tyson, if they can get a couple more receivers, a little better offensive line play, Denver's going to be right there in the mix going forward.
Well, I don't know if you noticed on Sunday, but we got our first Marvin Mims steady sighting of the year. And that's something that I think can look, I have a tendency to hold on to my guys for too long, but Bateman's finally coming around for me. I'm hoping Mims does the same here. No, but he's been awesome, and Estime that's a godsend for them in the run game because Javonte hasn't been good and Jalil hasn't been good. And we'll talk Jaden Daniels kind of a little bit later in the show here, so we'll save much of our kind of analysis on him for a later segment. But what about Drake May?
Ooh.
Because you can't talk Caleb Williams in one sentence and not mention the guy who just pantsed him.
Yeah. So the thing about Drake May is everybody knew the talent was there, right? Like it was big arm, super athletic.
It's supposed to take a long time, and the footwork wasn't good, and we knew that. It looks like maybe if you sit somebody for 7 weeks, they can learn things about how to play quarterback in the NFL.
I'm looking at this, Tyson. This isn't as big as a long of a project as I thought it was going to be. And I was like, sit him for a year. I was like, sit him behind Brissett. Like, I'm fully on board with that. I think they made the right decision doing that. I will say, though, I think they made the right decision moving to him when it was clear that, whether they're watching in practice or whatnot, this Brissett, you were never going to win with him. But it was like, is this guy going to be ready in time? And we kind of made fun of him. We're like, oh, my God, this offensive line is going to get him killed. Hey, well, you know what? He's actually athletic for the position. And he can run around and he can make plays, and he's avoiding these hits. We'll see how it goes for the rest. We got 7 more games on that spotty offensive line, so we'll kind of see. But I don't think this is as big of a project as I thought. I think next year, Tyson, you go aggressively let's say you go get T. Higgins. Oh, baby. I mean, now you got a number 1, Pop Douglas is the number 2. This is all of a sudden for the Patriots on offense is extremely interesting.
Yeah, Drake May walked into what in my estimation, the worst situation of all these rookie quarterbacks. You have Gerard Mayo, who's not an offensive guy. It turns out, apparently, he's a jerk, but they're winning games now ever since that story came out. So we'll calm down a bit on that. But skill position players, I mean, it's Jalen Polk, who you take in the second round. It's Pop Douglas, who you mentioned. It's Hunter Henry. It's Austin Hooper. It's Ramondre and Antonio Gibson. And it's not a great group. And they look like they're having fun. Dude, they did not look like they were having fun the first 5 or 6 weeks of the season. And then he comes in and it completely turned around even my own perception of the Patriots. I still think that they're going to be in contention here for that number 1 pick, or at least they'll be picking in the top 10 come April. But you don't have to worry about the quarterback position, which goes back to my just say it, because I mentioned the Giants, who just refused to address this position for the last couple of years. And the teams who did, are reaping the rewards right now. And Brad, what about Michael Penn? No, I'm just kidding.
We'll see. We'll see. I mean, gosh, Drake London looks like he's the guy. But to close this out, Tyson, I do want to say though, I think people overreacted with the Gerard Mayo thing. Like, no doubt, guys, This is football. I mean, have you ever sat in the meeting? Now we're not in the NFL meetings, but we played growing up. But I think people have kind of gotten away from that. Like, do you remember sitting in freaking film study when your coach is ripping your ass apart because you were in the spot you weren't supposed to be, or you maybe been dogging it? These guys are used to getting criticized. Now, we just are like, oh, clutching our pearls. How can you call him out and call him soft? Well, I guarantee you that Gerard Mayo, after he said that, went into the locker room. This guy's an ex-NFL linebacker. Like, do you want to mess with him? Probably not. And if you're a player, you could probably take him maybe. I mean, Gerard Mayo looks like he can go a little bit.
Yeah, so get somebody.
I think some things kind of got aired out in that locker room, and he's like, if you don't like what I said, then maybe you can play a little harder. Tyson, they are playing harder. That team's playing hard right now. They're tackling, they're flying around. Like you said, they're having fun. And that was not the case when they were losing, when Gerard Mayo felt like he had to air the dirty laundry in public.
Well, for 20 years, we didn't hear a peep out of Foxborough about anything. And so for like this to come out, 7 or whatever 5 games into his tenure, it was like, oh no. It turns out, they're just another NFL team.
Yeah. Not just another NFL team. I can't believe this team keeps doing it, man. The Chiefs have black magic going on, and this is insane. I don't actively root against the Chiefs, but at this certain point, if you're not rooting for them to lose a football game, then you're either in Kansas City or I don't know what's going on. Now, Tyson's taking the other side. He likes to be the villain. But I mean, I felt like I got kicked right in the balls when that freaking blocked field goal at the end of the game. One, because I love Sean Payton, and that win would have been awesome. For him to stick it there, everybody can't beat the Chiefs, and it's Sean Payton with his rookie QB. Oh, that would have been a chef's kiss. But of course, Chiefs do some black magic. Tyson, I'm running through things here. This is literally the luckiest team that's ever existed. And I know the Patriots had their dynastic run with Brady and Belichick where it just felt like everything was going their way. A lot of that was preparation and preparedness. I ran through it with you. I'm like, this team, you just don't get luckier in this. All of a sudden, in the biggest moment, the phantom holding call in the Super Bowl, Jimmy Garoppolo misses a wide open player from 20 yards wide open that he makes 95 times out of 100 in the first Super Bowl. In the second Super Bowl, Shanahan just goes full Shanahan while they're in the lead, losing overtime. to even get to the Super Bowl, the Bengals got hosed on the out of bounds call. How many pass interferences that are fandom? How many this and that? I mean, it's just every single week. But Tyson, I love saying things that are fugazi or house of cards. I cannot say that here because it's Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. They continue to do this. And it's questioning here. Yes, that was black magic on Sunday. That block kick should not have happened. They should not still be undefeated. They should have lost to the Bengals. They should have lost to the Ravens. They should. Yet they are still undefeated because they have the best quarterback in the world. They have the best coach in the NFL, and they do things that teams don't do. Tyson, Mahomes has a freaking winning record when this team is trailing by 10 points. What are we talking about here? It's unbelievable, and that is a scary thing.
So when he signed his 100-year, $500 million contract, this was a while ago, Brad and I got on the phone back before we were doing these things, on video, and we were just talking into our podcast. And it was like, well, I don't know how they're going to be able to get playmakers with allocating this much money to Pat Mahomes. Brad, all these guys do is make plays. Like, out of all of these, so the holding call, which you see the flag behind him, the stuff behind me, it was a hold. I mean, we can kind of admit that at this point, but it hurt in the moment. But most of the things that we're mad about when it comes to Kansas City is like Will Lutz didn't miss the kick this weekend. Leo Chanel made a play to block the kick. And if he didn't block it, somebody else right behind. There were 7 guys basically back there. They just keep making plays to win football games. And then at a certain point, you can't, like right now, the national media, look at the way the Lions just find a way to win that football game. But Kansas City does it again. Can they keep getting away with this? They just win. They're just better at winning than every other team. And it's confusing because the offense, can bail out the defense occasionally, and the defense can bail out the offense occasionally, but they don't play like anybody else in the NFL. And so it's hard to wrap your brain around, well, the other good teams can't do this. That's because they're just better than everybody. Like, I don't want them to go undefeated because I don't want the pressure of that. If for some reason our team is playing their team in the Super Bowl, I can't handle that. But this team might not lose. And, you have to not just beat them, you have to kill them. You have to chop the head off the snake, make sure it's dead. Because if they're down 17, this is the 2015 Warriors, dude.
Crazy. It is crazy. And you mentioned the Lions. Let's get into them. Are they the team of destiny now? I mean, holy smokes. Jared Goff threw 5 picks. That was nuts against this Texans team. Now, Nico Collins wasn't in the game. That was a huge thing for this Texans offense. But, I mean, they were rolling. I mean, they had the early interception. They got into the end zone. They were in plus game script. They had a dagger shot. Tank Dell wide open in the end zone. CJ Stroud, a little underthrown. Ball gets picked off. Next thing you know, the Lions have life. Now, they may have turned it over 17 more times in between that, both teams. But that was the moment there. That could have been the time that the stake was driven through the heart of the Detroit Lions. But the Lions survived. And Tyson, God, this team just, they are gritty. We talk all the time because we're the OG Dan Campbell guys when everybody was like, oh, this biting kneecaps thing isn't going to work and this and that. We're the OG Dan Campbell. No, this is going to work because this guy's an alpha and you need to be able to coach at an alpha way in the NFL. Everybody has a different, but you have to be an alpha coach if you're going to work. And this guy's working. And this team is taking on the personality of him. Never say die. Let's fight till the end. Let's kick somebody's ass. And if we're down, we're not going to give up. We're just going to keep fighting and clawing and all that stuff. And they did it. And now Tyson, I'm looking at this. If they're thinking right now, if we can survive 5 Jared Goff picks, I mean, what can't we survive? Because that was insane.
Oh, I mean, in the schedule, that's the thing right now, right? Is they've only played really, depending on who you ask, 3 or 4 good teams, and they snuck by the Vikings. They sneak by the Texans. They bodied the Packers, though, and I feel like that kind of got lost in the shuffle of the craziness of 2 weeks ago. But going forward here, it's going to be Mac Jones and the Jags. It's going to be Joe Flacco and the Lions. It's going to be the Bears that we talked about. You catch the Packers at home, and then it goes Bills, and that's tough. But by that point, by December 22nd, when they're playing the Bears, they could have realistically probably locked up the number 1 seed. Philly is really the only competition right now. It feels in the NFC for a team to take that away from them. This team is going to have home field advantage going to the playoff. This team seems like they're still kind of figuring out who they are on offense. I mean, 1 week they score 50 points throwing for 80 yards. The next week they need everything they can get out of their quarterback. It's really, really impressive stuff. And There was a time, Brad, when Aaron Glenn was supposed to lose his job and he can't coach. And I look at him on Hard Knocks, he's an idiot and all of this stuff. That defense is opportunistic and they're angry. And there's not a more dangerous thing in the NFL.
How about Darius Smith just first week not playing and he's coaching? Like Brad Smith, the GM, or Brad Holmes. I mean, shout out, man.
He's a genius.
He's so good. And I hear a lot of people, well, this thing, because he doesn't do the draft value thing right, eventually it's going to come to bite him. How about this? Draft really good players at positions you need, and let's go figure things out from there. And it seems like it's working for the Lions.
I mean, we talked about it before, but it's like Jack Campbell, can't have that. Kid's a stud. Jameer Gibbs, can't draft him there. Kid's a stud. Brian Branch, are you kidding me? A safety at the top of the second round? It's like their best player. What are we doing?
Crazy. Let's talk with our team, Tyson. And we're hesitant to come on here just to let everybody know and talk about the Eagles because it's like, are you guys just talking about them because they're your team? Well, I think the Eagles are in the national spotlight again because they're sitting here at 7-2, and ever since the bye, they are coming out and they're looking like gangbusters. Like this defense is legit. The offense is scoring points. Jalen Hurts, he had 2 turnovers in this game. He didn't turn the ball over in the month of October. What do you think, man? I'm more bullish than you are, but are they back? Are you ready to proclaim that?
Well, he had 2 turnovers when the sun was beaming into his eyeballs. Shout out to Jerry Jones. What a ridiculous, what an asshole. You want me to tear down the whole stadium and rebuild the whole thing? No, dude, use the retractable blinds that you built in your stadium, moron. What are we doing? No, I think that they're legit. We said a couple weeks ago that I firmly put them in the tier of like a team that can play in an NFC title game. Now I think that they're a team that can probably win the NFC championship. If they can win a Super Bowl, that's kind of to be determined, but that's not really what we do. It's not something that we say a ton is like, oh, this team can win a Super Bowl. If you can make a conference championship game, you can win a Super Bowl. That's the way that I look at it for the most part. Brad, they held the Giants and the Cowboys to under 50 yards passing total. Like when you factor in all the sacks and all the stuff like that. I know it was Cooper Rush and Trey Lance. I know it was Daniel Jones. Those guys get paid too. Those teams get paid too. Those teams have CeeDee Lamb on them. Those teams have Malik Neighbors on them. That's an impressive thing for a defense. And this is, I think, if I had to pinpoint why exactly the national media has been a little slow to come around to Philadelphia's defense is because this doesn't feel like an Eagles defense. An Eagles defense is the front 4, the front 5 is going to get you, and you're not going to have enough time. This is the back 6 or 7, depending on the formation that Fangio is running out, is winning in football games. We've been kind of pounding the table as Eagles fans, like, hey, why can't we have a Trent McDuffie? Or why can't we get one of these corners to walk in? Quinion Mitchell looks like, bona fide top 10 guy in the league right now, and Cooper DeJean has been fantastic as well. The pass rush is coming on a little bit, and the offense is going to get it figured out. There was a couple times in this game where Jalen Hurts turned down throws, but he was perfect in the third quarter. And he was really good in the first quarter outside of the first drive. They only played 3 quarters, folks. He had a bad second quarter. That's okay. They won by 28 points in a place they haven't won since 2017. And Brad, Nick Sirianni is now 34-11 in his last 45 games. He should be fired.
That's what everybody still thinks. What does he do? We're going to know if they're back or not. Now, I'm going to proclaim the Eagles are back. Now, if the Eagles get shredded up on defense, I'll still say they're back because that's our Eagles. Like I'll be like, oh yeah, no, that's just how it works. Mm-hmm. But they won 5 in a row. Here are the quarterbacks: Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones, Joe Burrow. Good performance outside of the first couple drives. Trevor Lawrence, which I guess the national media still thinks he's a top 10 guy. I mean, nobody's taking a shot at him. So what are we doing? And then Cooper Rush. Now we'll preview this here coming up shortly. On Thursday Night Football, you're facing Jaden Daniels. This is a real test. Got to go on the road and face Matt Stafford and the Rams. Big test with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. And then you go back on the road and face Lamar Jackson. So these are stretches here where we're really going to find out a lot about this Eagles defense and this Eagles team. Now, I think offensively, though, they shouldn't have any issues. Now, I don't want to jump the gun here. We'll get into it against Commanders, but Ravens don't have the same defense without their guy who's took over the head coach of Seahawks. And the Rams, I mean, in spurts, they can look okay, but they've also been susceptible. So this to me is the test of the defense. If the Eagles defense looks great, Tyson, I already think that they can win a Super Bowl, this team right now. But if they look great against, let's even say good and are formidable against this trio of quarterbacks, oh, baby, I'm going to get real excited.
And it's important to keep in mind that the Pittsburgh Steelers have an excellent defense, and they just allowed 27 points. The Commanders' offense is good.
Yeah. All right, let's get into it now. Let's start previewing some matchups.
marquee matchups.
And let's start with the Thursday night game, Commanders at Eagles. And we touched on a little bit, and we want to save a little bit of Jaden Daniels in the rookie QB conversation because he's clearly the best rookie quarterback that they have going on right now. What's your faith on the Eagles defense? What's your faith in the Commanders offense to keep it rolling? I think we got two hot teams coming at the same time. Man, I think this will be a banger.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's Vic Fangio defense that traditionally is just eating rookie quarterbacks alive, but this isn't your typical rookie quarterback. I think some of the things Pittsburgh was able to do as far as containing Jaden Daniels within the pocket is really the reason that they were able to win that game. I think he finished the game total with 5 rushing yards, and he's not the same runner or even style of runner as Lamar Jackson, where he's almost looking to pass while he's moving around.
Mm-hmm.
But if he has to stay in that pocket, then all of a sudden things get a little interesting, especially when in the middle of that defense will be Jalen Carter waiting for him there if he decides to step up. He's been electric and fantastic, and Diami Brown has stepped up here, and Zach Ertz is coming home to Philly, first game back in Philadelphia since he left. And Terry McLaurin always kills the Eagles. And so those are things to keep in mind. I mean, he crushes Philly. It's always 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, it feels like. This is a fantastic game because this is the first one I feel like this season. I know Lions-Packers earlier, but this is the real, this is intra-division where you're fighting for the crown, and it's really just you two, right? Dallas is dead. New York is dead. This is huge for the NFC East. It's huge for the NFC as a whole. I think that Brian Robinson's health is going to be a massive factor. The Eagles' run defense has been pretty good, since the beginning of this year, where it was it's been good, but is it just because of XYZ or, Bijan's finding his footing or what exactly is going on? Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler have formed a heck of a 1-2 punch here for Washington. I think that it might be getting to the time of the season where the rest of the NFL goes, oh, yeah, that's Cliff Kingsbury. We figured this out.
Yeah, so that's what I'm curious about here, Tyson. Now, I thought that was going to come against the Steelers. Now, the Steelers did win 28-27. Crazy game. I mean, that was entertaining. I was surprised the Steelers only were able to get 3 sacks. Now, I think that's the Jaden Daniels factor here, right? It's not just the mobility. It's not just his ability to get the ball out quick, but it's also extending plays and then not just dumping things out of bounds where it's 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10, or, you set up a
they
long
don't get behind the sticks.
Go. They really don't. And that's a sign of a quarterback who's in control. Now, Daniels was only 17 to 34 for 202 against the Steelers. I think if you're the Eagles, you take that performance. If you can hold them to that without a scoring touchdown, without a passing touchdown, you'll take that any day. Tyson, I'm looking at the advanced stats here on the EPA per play basis. Washington second overall behind the Baltimore Ravens. Eagles are 9th. But on the defensive side here, how about this? The Eagles have vaulted up to 6th in EPA per play on defense. I mean, kind of makes sense based on the way they've been playing. Washington's still at 21st. So while Dan Quinn, the defensive head coach, I think the defense is playing better. Metrically, it doesn't necessarily say that. So I think there is an ability for this Eagles offense to still produce results against this defense, although Dan Quinn's actually been good against Jalen Hurts in the past.
Yeah, but we've seen St. Juice play against A.J. Brown. We've seen some of these corners match up, and we know the whooping that they've taken to these Eagles wide receivers. This might be the first time I'm ever going to say this, and maybe the last in my life. If the Eagles win this game on Thursday, it's going to be because of special teams. The special teams has been electric for Philadelphia, and I think we're getting closer to a punt return touchdown. We're getting closer to a block punt. We're getting closer to some big plays in the kick return game. And Washington Seibert's been electric as a field goal kicker. But as far as the return game goes, I think they've left some things to be desired there. And in these interdivisional games, when things get crazy and Washington seems incapable of playing a game that isn't just wild, essentially at the end right now, it comes down to special teams more times than not.
Another division game, Ravens at Steelers, that we want to highlight. This one, boy, oh boy.
Are we getting duped? Because you and I are both going to sit here and say that the Ravens are better than the Steelers and they're going to win this game and they're just going to run the ball and Lamar is better, all of this stuff. And then it's going to be 13-6 with 8 fumbles and it's going to rain even though the forecast doesn't call for it. The Steelers are going to do their thing.
So I think the latter might happen here. With the Steelers are – Mike Tomlin's got them going on right now. Yeah. Russ Wilson, he is in control of this offense. And we both kind of thought it was going to work out this way. Well, I don't think necessarily you thought, because you're a Russ hater and you thought he was cooked. But you said if it was going to happen, it's with this play action game with Art Smith, because that's when he's in control, right? The bootlegs, when he can kind of move around, and then you got an ability to take deep shots, and that's what they're doing, and it's working. Like, this offense looks good. Russ looks great, and this Ravens defense. I think if it was Mike McDonald, you'd be like, I don't know about this too much. Maybe he kind of has something for Russ and confuse him a little bit. This defense, if you're the Ravens, this is not scaring anybody. Like, if I'm the Steelers walking this, I'm like, this isn't the Ravens defense of the past. We've seen teams shred them up. I think Freiermuth should be in for a big game here. You would expect George Pickens to eat. I don't know. Maybe it's a secondary guy, Calvin Austin. On the flip side, the Ravens, though, is it going to be something similar? Like, can Lamar Jackson continue to find his guys? Like, I would expect Zay Flowers to have a big game here. It was quiet last week. This one should be, if there's time for Lamar to throw, I think Zay Flowers should eat in this one. But Tyson, Steelers getting 3 at home? Really? That seems a little much to me.
That seems disrespectful, especially for a guy who's handled Lamar Jackson better than anybody else in the entire NFL since he came in the league. Tomlin doesn't have his number because nobody does, but he's pretty close to. I guess the Chiefs probably do. I mean, if you're going to have somebody, but they have everybody's number, it doesn't count. This is a fun game. This is two coaches who've seen each other like 40 times by now. This is two offenses who've seen the opposing defense a bunch with some new faces. I think that yes, the Ravens defense stinks right now, and it's a problem. I'm having a hard time looking at the stats and just not remembering that sometimes generational players do generational things, and Jamar Chase cooked you and Joe Burrow cooked you, and that just happens sometimes. They get the best of the best. And did you make it easy for them? Absolutely. But okay, so if they were playing their best, Burrow only throws for 320 and 3 touchdowns instead of 450 and 5 or whatever it ended up being. This one's going to be a ton of fun. This is the Steelers right now, to me, are the case study in, like, it's so funny every time people do this. You can be a really good coach and not be able to be a head coach, because Art Smith has his offense rolling and looking better than they have since the Triple B era, really. Muted. You're on mute, big dog.
Oh, geez, what the hell's going on here? So I missed that entire thing. I'll run through this quickly. Ravens, first in EPA per play on offense. Steelers up to 13th. And then on defense, the Steelers 4th, and the Ravens are 27th. So that's something interesting here. Tyson, it's hard for me to say this isn't going to be a slugfest, but boy, the way these defenses and the offense have been performing, could we get a shootout for once in the AFC North?
It might be a show. It might be a show.
All right, let's close it out here. Chiefs at Bills. We've been talking about this, man. Oh, Chiefs, they're going to lose this week. I'm just going to put it all out here. Chiefs got to go on the road. Huge emotional performance off of a divisional game where not a lot of people thought the Broncos are going to be competitive, and they should have beat the Chiefs. Now the Chiefs got to go across the country to a place where they've lost in the regular season before. The Bills have beaten them. It's not like the Bills can't get the boogeyman off their back. It's just in the playoffs they can't do it. So I think the Bills and the Chiefs undefeated record this weekend.
I mean, this is the NFL. They beat the Bills and they lose to the Panthers next week on the road somehow. That might be what happens. When is Josh Allen going to get any sort of MVP love? Like, what the hell? This guy he's an absolute animal. He's awesome. Amari Cooper's out. Keon Coleman's out. Dalton Kincaid's out. Was it third quarter or second quarter that he hurt himself, missed the rest of the game? It doesn't really matter because the offense just kept rolling. James Cook looks okay. He doesn't look quite as explosive maybe as he did to start the year when it was like, oh, no, if Buffalo found a running game, everybody's in trouble. And we've talked about the Chiefs ad nauseum here a little bit, but this Buffalo team is really scary, and they're really good, and they're winning games in ways that maybe we're not used to seeing from Buffalo. And this is just another part of a little data collection phase because these teams are going to play each other in 2 months.
Tyson, remember how everybody's talking about, the Chiefs have like the best defense in the NFL and all this? On the EPA per play basis, they're 15th. What the hell? What's going on? Now, do you see some cracks in that defense? Because I thought they looked a little bit exposed in a couple of their last 2 games here. I mean, we talked about not having L'Jarius Sneed and, some of the linebackers they lost. There might be some depth issues. There might be some talent deficiencies. Now, I think they masked that early on, and Spagnuolo, I think, is the best defensive coordinator in the NFL. But at a certain place, it comes down to the Jimmies and Joes, not just the X's and O's. And if you're sitting 15th, I know people are like, oh, this defense looks great. That means that they are overperforming and that there is going to be a correction coming soon. Do you buy that? I know you're kind of pushed back on some of these EPA numbers a little bit, but what's your thought process on that?
I think that they can be poor until it's time to win the football game, and then they're the best in the league. And that is something that can't really be captured by numbers or really anything. And we see it, but we don't know why it's happening. Again, it's just a defense that finds a way to win games at the end. They should have lost last week to Denver because the defense lets you down as they drive down the field, and Bo Nix is leading a game-winning drive. And then Leo Chanel makes a play and blocks a kick. And special teams is different than defense, but for all intents and purposes here, we can kind of lump them in together. They just make plays at the end of games. It's absurd.
Buffalo 3rd in EPA per play on offense. Just continue to roll. It's just impressive. Chiefs are 10. It might be even more impressive.
I feel like, well, first of all, Pat Mahomes might have killed Xavier Worthy for no reason. So that's 2 wide receivers that he's knocked out at some point this season. What point do we have to say, hey, this guy doesn't like anybody besides 87. He's trying to get all these guys killed. No, but I think Buffalo has been more impressive than even 3rd to me. I think that they're the scariest offense to play right now in the NFL, and that's no disrespect to Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry.
All right. Great show, Tyson. Let's get out of here. Like, subscribe, and share. You guys know the drill. Subscribe so you don't miss a single thing. Like that show on the way out. If you're watching on YouTube, 5 stars. If you're listening to podcast form, if you haven't already, share it with a friend. Share it with an enemy. We got our college football reaction coming up later. Should be a fun one that we got to discuss. And we're getting closer and closer to college football playoff time. We'll speak to you guys then. Peace.